I became a tech journalist because I wanted to tell stories about technology. That sounds obvious, but as a disabled person, your life is filled with all sorts of assistive tech. My first ever proper TV presenting gig was about prosthetic running blades.
Even with all the training in the world, I don't think I'm ever going to be fit enough to compete with these guys.
Assistive tech in the last 20 years has absolutely transformed from something that was very basic to science fiction. It's completely mind-blowing.
This is one of the most incredible things I've ever done.
The Paris Olympics truly are pushing the envelope in terms of technology and how it's being deployed.
We've got blood, we've got sweat. If I was doing this, we'd definitely have the tears as well.
It's really important for journalists to bring their own experience to the stories that they cover. But just because I'm a disabled person doesn't mean that I should only ever cover stories to do with disability. And that's a very fine line to tread, but hopefully I'm getting it right.
Today at 1, another new high. Jails in England and Wales are holding the largest number of prisoners since records began. It comes just days before thousands of inmates are released early to try and ease pressure on an overcrowded and struggling system. The summer riots helped drive the rise. In the last hour, the largest sentence so far has been handed down: 9 years in jail for Thomas Burley for arson at an asylum hotel in Rotherham. Also on the programme, the BBC finds private tutors aren't being checked for offending behaviour, and more than 90 have been convicted of sexual offences involving young people. At least 17 children are killed in a fire inside a school dormitory in central Kenya. And polar explorer Dwayne Fields takes his place as the UK's new Chief Scout, promising to make it a family for anyone.
I think scouting has done so much for me personally. I want to give back, and I think this is a great way to do it.
And coming up on BBC News, England are putting to bat on an overcast first morning of the third test against Sri Lanka. They already hold an unassailable 2-0 series lead.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The prison population in England and Wales has hit a record high for the second week in a row. The latest figures show there are now more than 88,500 inmates. That's a rise of almost 1,200 in 5 weeks. Around half of those are cases linked to this summer's riots. In a few days' time, the government's temporary early release scheme will begin, and some offenders will be able to leave jail at an earlier point in their sentences. Well, let's speak to our UK correspondent, Daniel Sandford. Daniel, what are these high numbers doing to the prison system?
Well, Anna, last week I was sitting here talking to your audience about the prison population hitting an all-time high. Well, this week it's even higher. And essentially what happened is on the 30th of July, when the rioting started this summer, the prison population has been rising week after week after week, going up by almost 1,200 in 5 weeks. Just under half of those cases are linked to this summer's rioting, and it's putting a lot of stress on an already very stressed prison system. This week the BBC was filming in Pentonville prison in London to witness the problems that this is causing: assaults on staff, distressed prisoners, people being held for months ahead of their trials, gang wars outside prisons spilling over to the inside. And this is what the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Nick Hardwick, had to say about the prison system in England and Wales at the moment.
The few prisons I've been into more recently, for the first time, I felt I needed to be concerned about my own security and safety. And I think that just brings home about, for staff working in these places, we know levels of assaults on staff have gone through the roof. You know, prisons aren't just chaotic and ineffective, they're frightening places too. And that's not acceptable either for the staff who work there or for the prisoners who are held there.
Now, on Tuesday, the government is going to be releasing up to 2,000 prisoners early at the 40% stage of their prison sentence instead of the 50% stage. So, for example, if someone had been jailed for 4 years, they'll be coming out at 1 year, 8 months instead of at 2 years. Now, that was actually announced before this summer's riots. It was designed to give the prison system in England and Wales some breathing space, but of course that breathing space is going to be considerably less now. Ministers have even looking at the possibility of sending prisoners to be held in Estonia, but I understand there are no plans to announce that plan at the moment.
Daniel, thank you. And you can see more of that special report inside Pentonville prison later in the programme. And as we were hearing there, the riots in England and Northern Ireland just over a month ago were a key factor in the rise of the prison population to that record high. In the last half an hour, a 9-year jail sentence, the biggest so far, has been handed out following disorder at an asylum hotel in Rotherham. Jess Lane reports.
Rioters starting fires and forcing their way into this Holiday Inn Express last month. Police officers were attacked and injured in the violence at the hotel in Manvers near Rotherham, which had been housing more than 200 asylum seekers. Today, 27-year-old Thomas Burley from Rotherham has been sent to prison for 9 years, the longest sentence given to anyone involved in the riots so far, after pleading guilty to arson with intent to endanger life, violent disorder and possession of an offensive weapon. The court was shown this video of him wearing a black hooded coat and red mask, placing wood on top of the fire started in this bin, which was later pushed through the door. He shouts abuse at police before putting a large piece of chipboard onto the fire, which takes hold quickly. He was also accused of throwing items at the police and squaring up to officers with riot shields. This is the second sentencing in 3 days following the disorder which took place at the hotel in Rotherham. Craydon Mackenzie from Barnsley was sent to prison for 3 years. The unemployed labourer was one of the first people to enter the Holiday Inn. This video was shown in court of Mackenzie walking through the hotel as terrified staff hid in the kitchen. The court heard Mackenzie was also in a crowd attacking a group of riot police with fire extinguishers and other weapons amid shouts of "burn it down." Nearly 5 weeks after the violent scenes in Rotherham and around the country, people who were involved are still being told they'll be found and punished. Jessica Lane, BBC News.
Well, our North of England correspondent Danny Savage is at Sheffield Crown Court, where Thomas Burley was sentenced. Danny, we saw him there pushing that lighted bin towards the hotel. This was one of the most serious cases in the riots. What has the judge had to say this morning?
Yeah, it was the most serious since, I suppose, when many people think back to the unrest over the summer, Anna, the pictures from outside that Holiday Inn Express in Manvers near Rotherham are those that spring to mind for many people. And he was the latest person to be sentenced it. But as the judge said today, it was by far the most serious one of its kind to come from that case. The judge spoke for over half an hour sentencing Thomas Burley this afternoon. He said it was unquestionably one of the worst of many cases which have been heard in this court. It was nothing to do with legitimate public protest. It was mob rule. The venom of racism affected the entirety of what occurred. He went on to describe the feelings of people inside the hotel at the time. He said people inside thought they were going to die. The lives of at least 50 people were endangered. They were all mentally scarred and in peril of being killed or injured. And after that, he went on to say that Burley was encouraged by malicious and ignorant posts on social media, that he followed racist accounts, and he was sentencing him on the basis of it being a racist incident. He was jailed for 9 years. That's the longest sentence handed down for any of the civil unrest that we've heard about in the previous couple of months. He was sentenced for 9 years, but that was extended for 5 years as well. He will be on licence for 5 years once he comes out. So effectively, it is a 14-year sentence. Anna.
Danny, thank you. And the suspended Labour councillor Ricky Jones has pleaded not guilty this morning to a charge of encouraging violent disorder in connection with comments made at a London counter-protest. He appeared at Snaresbrook Crown Court via video link. Video had emerged online of Mr Jones appearing to tell a crowd in Walthamstow that far-right demonstrators should have their throats cut. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is chairing a meeting to look at ways of tackling criminal gangs who smuggle people across the Channel. 12 migrants died on Tuesday when their small boat came apart off the French coast. Now, ministers, the National Crime Agency and the UK Border Force are discussing what more can be done to stop the crossings. Our Home editor Mark Easton reports.
The government claims the deaths of 12 migrants in the Channel just off the French coast earlier this week is evidence of both the moral imperative in destroying the smuggling gangs and also that measures to disrupt the criminal networks are having an impact. The Home Office says it suggests the business model of the smugglers is under pressure. More people are being crammed into less seaworthy vessels, with intelligence suggesting the gangs have increased their charges, including demanding payment for children. Almost 22,000 migrants have arrived in Britain after attempting to cross the Channel this year, more than 7,000 since the election. Having scrapped the previous government's Rwanda plan, the Labour administration is under pressure to prove it has a plan to stop the boats. At a meeting of senior government ministers, intelligence agencies and law enforcement bodies in London today, the Home Office will say 40 small boats and engines were seized in an operation in Bulgaria in recent weeks, that there are currently 70 live investigations, including operations targeting gangs in Libya, Romania and Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, plans to house asylum seekers, including small boat migrants at RAF Scampton, a former Ministry of Defence site in Lincolnshire, have been scrapped. The Home Office says it would have cost £122 million over 3 years and no longer represents value for money.
Even the civil servants that came to visit the site in February last year said that it was not suitable, so they already knew that. But, with the investment, the history and the heritage that's here, we couldn't just stand by and let that all get ruined, so we had to do something about it.
However, critics say the government is not moving quickly enough to deal with the small boats crisis. After promising the rapid recruitment of a border security commander to oversee the response 2 months ago, Downing Street has now said the appointment will be confirmed in the next few weeks. Today's meeting, styled as a landmark operational summit, is an opportunity to demonstrate some progress in the challenge of destroying the smuggling gangs. Mark Easton, BBC News.
The UK will send an additional 650 short-range missiles to Ukraine as part of a new £162 million package of aid to help it fight against invading Russian forces. President Zelensky has urged NATO allies to provide long-range weapons at a defence meeting in Germany. He says those arms are needed in order to strike targets inside Russia. Pope Francis has landed in Papua New Guinea on the second stop of a 12-day Asia-Pacific tour. The 87-year-old was received by a military guard of honour and a brass band that played the Vatican anthem as he arrived in the capital, Port Moresby. This summer was the Earth's warmest on record, according to the European Union's climate monitor Copernicus. Despite the UK having its coolest summer since 2015, much of Europe experienced hotter than average temperatures over the last 3 months. The 22nd of July was the hottest day on record for average global temperatures. At least 17 children have been killed in a fire at a school in central Kenya. The blaze started in a dormitory building. There are fears the death toll could rise further, with more than a dozen other pupils taken to hospital with severe burns. We're joined by our Africa correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher, who is at the hospital which is treating the injured. Barbara, what more do we know?
Well, as you said, 17 boys dead, 14 injured, and possibly the death toll to rise. As well as that, of course, there are many children who've been traumatized by the experience, which was pretty awful. And we understand that families have been told to bring their children here to the Mount Kenya Hospital, where the International Committee of the Red Cross is going to be setting up a trauma center for psychological counseling for those children. And what they've been through, it was overnight at around 11 o'clock at night. The fire started in the boys' dormitory, 156 boys sleeping there between the ages of 9 and 13. and they were engulfed by flames. Some of them tried to escape the fire by crawling underneath their beds. Firefighters came, of course, but they were delayed because of muddy roads, and many neighbors from around the area also pitched in. So many people in the end were involved in putting out the fire and trying to rescue the boys. But as we've said, some of them didn't make it, and families now are still looking for some of those children. They're not entirely clear where the injured might be. They're also not entirely clear whether their children are among the dead, because the bodies were burnt beyond recognition. And it has to be said, fires in Kenyan boarding schools are actually fairly common. You have sometimes students starting them in protest because of heavy workloads or because of poor living conditions. We don't know if that's what caused this. There's going to be an investigation into what started this. But of course, the most immediate concern for the parents is that horrible task of trying to find out exactly what happened to their children and then mourning their loss and burying them.
Barbara, thank you. A powerful sedative, which has such a strong effect on users that it's become known as a zombie drug, is set to be banned under new rules aimed at tackling the growing problem of synthetic opioids. Xylazine is normally used in vet surgeries and is highly addictive. It's just one of more than 20 dangerous substances expected to be recategorised under new legislation. Our correspondent Graham Satchell reports.
On the streets of Philadelphia, the paralysing effect of the animal sedative xylazine. It's known as the zombie drug for good reason. It lowers the heart and breathing rate, leaving people seemingly lifeless. Xylazine is used in combination with opioids like heroin, fentanyl and nitazine as a cheap means of stretching out each dose. It has spread rapidly across the state, leading to a significant rise in the number of drug overdose deaths. In this country, we've seen similar images from the use of the synthetic cannabinoid spice. But the use of xylazine is also on the rise here.
We now have over 30 deaths that have been reported to the programme. So it might be that deaths were happening before that particular case, but the drug just wasn't being looked for. So, but now we are looking for it. We're seeing it appearing in many more cases.
Now the government is banning the drug, along with 21 other dangerous substances. Xylazine will become a Class C drug, resulting in a prison sentence of up to 14 years for anyone caught producing or supplying it.
We're really clear with our Safer Streets mission that we've got to deal with this kind of problem that we're seeing on some of our streets, and also we've got to make sure that those who are exploiting vulnerable people are held to account.
The head of the National Crime Agency has said there's never been a more dangerous time to take drugs, as the number of deaths linked to tranquilizers and synthetic opioids continues to rise. Graham Satchell, BBC News.
Time is 16 minutes past 1. Our top story this afternoon. The longest jail term so far for those involved in this summer's riots, as Thomas Burley is sentenced to 9 years in jail for arson at an asylum hotel in Rotherham. And a new count of the UK's endangered puffins brings good news. Their numbers are up despite the threat of bird flu.
Coming up on BBC News, plenty for the home crowd at Flushing Meadows to get excited about as American Jessica Pegula makes it through to the final of the US Open. She'll take on Arina Sabalenka in tomorrow's final.
The Children's Commissioner for England has called for mandatory background checks for private tutors after BBC News found that more than 90 of them have been convicted of sex offences against children over the last 20 years. Currently, there's no legal duty for private tutors to have a criminal records check. 30% of secondary school pupils in the UK are thought to have used them. Angus Crawford has more.
I guess I kind of assumed there was some sort of protection in place.
Imagine finding out the man who tutored your daughter for years had also abused her.
Do you remember when your daughter told you what had been happening?
Very clearly, yes. It was one of those bottom falling out of your world moments that as a parent, you never ever want to think. You feel like you really failed as a parent in your kind of most basic duty of keeping your child safe.
But how do you keep them safe? Private tutors are unregulated. They don't have to undergo any criminal record checks.
When you are hiring a tutor, you're hiring a tutor to help your child. it's like this dreadful irony that actually, you know, you can be putting them in the worst danger, you know, of your life.
That's no exaggeration. Look, the faces of private tutors convicted of sex crimes involving children. Our investigation found 92 over the last 2 decades across the UK. Men like Thomas Rogers, a music tutor. And here, conducting a choir, found guilty of abusing 2 boys aged under 11.
He's never admitted what he's done. He's been in complete denial, so that's been quite hard.
George was one of those boys. Now an adult, he's horrified that even after conviction, Rogers was able to carry on giving private music lessons to children.
You got the conviction, but then you realised that he could still teach privately.
Yeah, and that's, to this day, I just don't understand. He's free to go and teach other children, and if people don't have the capabilities to, you know, read the internet or have missed the story or anything like that's happened, they can literally open up a door and send their kid in with someone that's done these horrific crimes. It's just insane.
But how can abusers be free to offer tutoring? The answer? The law doesn't demand qualifications or criminal record checks. Parents may have no way of checking. There are now urgent calls for change.
Look, I think it's deeply concerning. Anyone who is working with a child one-to-one should really have had their DBS and gone through proper vetting. And it seems to me obvious that if there's one-ones with children and adults, whether that's a music lesson, whether that's some catch-up, we need to make sure that that child is safe.
What do you think of the system?
It's broken. The system's 100% broken, and it needs change before there's serious damage done to other children.
The system is not fit for purpose. It's not safeguarding children. It's not helping parents. It's appalling, frankly.
This whole industry is unregulated, and you have no idea who you're handing your child over to.
So when will a child in a tutor's home get the same protection as in the classroom?
At its heart, this is a story about double standards. Teachers in the classroom, as I said in that report, have to go through rigorous DBS enhanced criminal records checks. Tutors teaching from the comfort of their own home don't have to go through any checks at all. There's been a really interesting, strong reaction after our report first aired on Breakfast this morning. So the Tutors Association, which represents 50,000 tutors across the UK, says it fully supports calls for there to be mandatory checks. It wants them brought in as soon as possible, just as the Children's Commissioner for England also said. And a former Chief Crown Prosecutor, Nazir Afzal, he helped prosecute some of the Rochdale grooming gangs. He has posted on X that he thinks this has to change immediately. So it seems like the ball is very firmly now in the government's court, and the Department for Education sent me a statement saying they were deeply concerned by our findings, and also said our ministers are considering what further action might be appropriate to protect children from harm across all out-of-school settings, including private tutors.
Thank you, Angus. The Green Party's autumn conference begins in Manchester today. It's the first since their most successful set of general election results, which saw them win 4 seats in Parliament. Our political correspondent Harry Farley is there.
2 months on from their strongest general election result, the mood in the Green Party is jubilant. Now, with 4 MPs up from just 1, they represent both student cities like Brighton and Bristol and former Tory strongholds in Herefordshire and East Anglia. The party hopes to use its new presence in the Commons to challenge Labour from the left.
The government needs to take bolder action to put the investment in that's actually needed, whether that is to address the issues of safety and order in our prisons, or whether it's to restore the NHS, which is severely overstretched. And what we're arguing is that, yes, the government, of course, is tackling the chaos that the previous government left, but there are actually choices that could be made that would enable us to invest more in the NHS, in restoring nature.
But there are questions. How to hold on to their new coalition of both former Conservative voters and those on the left. How to move from a largely volunteer-run body to a more professional political party. And after they were criticised by economists in the election for suggesting unattainable policies, how to offer credible ideas to build on their election success. Well, in that election campaign, there were doubts from some that the Greens could achieve those 4 MPs that they were aiming for. So there is a sense of real triumph and excitement here at the conference venue this afternoon. In the next few minutes, Adrian Ramsey, the co-leader, will deliver his speech. It was due to be a joint speech with Carla Denyer, but we're told that she has COVID-like symptoms, so he will deliver it on his own. But as well as that sense of excitement, there is also an underlying tension. As we came in to the conference centre today, there was a protest from a group called Greens in Exile, who say that they have been expelled from the party because of their gender-critical views. Adrian Ramsey says that he thinks that people should be able to express gender-critical views if it is done respectfully. But I was speaking to one senior figure in the party last night who said that there does need to be a bit of a reset on the party's stance on a number of issues. And that's perhaps one example of the topics, the discussions that are expected to be thrashed out behind the scenes largely over the next few days here in Manchester.
Thank you, Harry. Dame Sarah Storey has won her 19th Paralympic gold medal after taking the cycling road race title in Paris. It means she extends her record as the most successful British Paralympian of all time. It was one of 57 golds that are up for grabs in the French capital on day 9 of the Games. Our correspondent Sally Hurst has the latest.
The rain has cleared in Paris, meaning cycling fans could turn out in all their finery. Lining up with rivals half her age was 46-year-old Dame Sarah Storey. Braced for 5 laps of the Clichy-sous-Bois course, 71 kilometres circling the outskirts of the city. And Storey wasn't hanging around, asserting her authority on the race from the start.
Sarah Storey on the attack early on here.
Attacking to take the lead. Hot on her heels, 19-year-old Heidi Gauguin of France, who was picked to gold by Storey in the time trial earlier this week. With less than a kilometre to go, Gauguin made her move. Now it all came down to youth versus experience.
There's the gap. Is it starting to close? Dame Sarah Storey giving everything now. She's getting closer.
And it was all those years and miles of experience that meant Storey didn't panic when a gap opened up. She calmly, steadily reeled Gauguin in. There was a glance between the pair, a mutual acknowledgement of respect before Storey took it to the line.
It's youth against experience. Gauguin comes again. What has Sarah Storey got left? Has she done it? She has. Oh, what a
19 Paralympic gold medals.
Gold medal. You didn't doubt her, did you?
A congratulatory hug from daughter Louisa. Dame Sarah's incredible story continues.
And Sally joins us live from Paris. Those gold medals just keep on coming, don't they?
Yes, we have another gold medal for Great Britain from this morning to tell you about Ben Sandilands in the 1500 metres T20. He went into the bell in 3rd position, but he had an incredible final lap to finish streaks ahead of his rivals with a new world record as well. And there was a silver for wheelchair athlete Marcus Perrin-O'Daly in the T52 100 metres. A silver for him, a great result on his debut Paralympic Games. Disappointment though for Jonathan Broome-Edwards in the high jump. He went in as one of the favourites after getting a gold in Tokyo. He finished well outside of the medals. He looked so disappointed. Hardly surprising though when you consider he had surgery on a fractured ankle just 6 weeks before the Games began. Some other gold medal finals to look forward to this afternoon. In table tennis, Will Bailey, one of the best known faces of the Paralympic Games perhaps, Strictly Come Dancing star formerly as well. He breezed through his semi-final to reach the gold medal final. That's later tonight. His teammate Rob Davies currently in action. He did lose his first game, but he is guaranteed a medal. And in wheelchair tennis, Alfie Hewitt has won everything in that sport apart from Paralympic gold. He gets 2 shots at making that right. He's through to the singles final and the doubles final this afternoon with Gordon Reid. That's starting very shortly at Roland Garros. We're going to try and hot-foot it over there shortly to watch all the action.
Thank you, Sally. The National Trust says the puffin population off the Northumberland coast has increased despite the impact of bird flu. They're an endangered species in Europe, and rangers on the Farne Islands haven't been able to count them properly because of the virus and the COVID outbreak. Now, though, a new census suggests that their numbers have gone up by 15%. Our North of England correspondent Fiona Trott has the story.
They're precious and they need to be protected.
There are about 20 fledged ones on the beach, so there were loads, but they seem to have gone. I mean, I'm sure they're around.
So, day by day, metre by metre, the rangers here have been counting them.
This one looks very occupied. There's lots of fresh droppings in there. This one's also occupied, a bit of eggshell and feather as well, which is good.
And now there's good news.
It's gone up by 15%, which means the population is stable. I think all the rangers are super happy. You're sort of like proud because you've looked after them and done all the work.
You must have been so relieved.
So relieved, because they are such characters as well, and you do become attached to them. You just do, every single one of them.
This is what they were worried about. During the avian flu outbreak, around 10,000 birds perished. 900 of them were puffins, which only lay one egg a year. Little did they know the birds' quirky behaviour would actually end up protecting some of them.
Puffins are clever little creatures. They keep their burrows clean, they self-isolate like we did during lockdown, and rangers think that's one of the reasons why they've done well despite bird flu.
Another reason is that there's been less named storms. The water's churned up from storms, they can't see the fish, so it meant they were bringing back more fish, which is successful, so the island's ideal for them this year.
All life is fragile on these remote islands, and the puffin count helps researchers understand what's happening with the wider environment.
Puffins, like all the seabirds we have here on the Farne Islands, they're very indicative of the health of our seas, the state of our environment. If there's anything wrong with the seas, then the seabirds, they'll be the first to suffer. So it's really important that we have an idea of just how many we have.
The ambition now is to monitor the puffins every single year. Known as the clowns of the sea, these colourful characters entertain us, but can teach us so much more. Fiona Trott, BBC News, Northumberland.
And a reminder of our top headline this afternoon. The longest jail term so far for those involved in this summer's riots, as Thomas Burley is sentenced to 9 years in jail for arson at an asylum hotel in Rotherham. And the hunt for Asian hornets as the UK's beekeepers battle to protect their colonies from a devastating predator. We'll have a full forecast in the next half hour, but it's time to get a quick look at the weather now. Here's Chris.
Yes, Anna, and today I've been getting my abacus out and I've been gradually totting up the rainfall hour by hour. I reckon in Farnborough, over the last 30 hours, we've recorded 52 millimetres of rain, which isn't far off a whole month's worth of rain here. The monthly average for September is 59 millimetres, and, you know, there is a bit more rain to come across southern England. Another heavier pulse just working in across Kent and Sussex at the moment. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's all doom and gloom today, because for the bulk of the UK, there's some lovely sunshine to be found and some pretty high temperatures. 27 degrees in parts of East Anglia this afternoon, into the northwest of England, 26 there in Liverpool, well above average for this time of the year. But of course, I'll be giving you the full forecast for the rest of today and the weekend beyond in about half an hour.
Lovely, thanks Chris. Now, as you heard earlier in the programme, the prison population in England and Wales has reached another record high. It means that jails are badly overcrowded and struggling to cope. Ahead of a new scheme that starts next week, where some inmates will be freed at an earlier point in their sentences to try and bring those numbers down, our senior UK correspondent Seema Katecha has had special access to Pentonville Prison in North London.
Chaos in HMP Pentonville. We're the only broadcast journalists given access to one of Britain's most dangerous jails since the current crisis.
OK, come on, folks.
And some prison officers are so frightened of being targeted on the outside that we've had to blur their faces.
HMP Pentonville.
Staff are overstretched.
Another alarm, yeah.
and on the verge of breaking point.
You worry about, opening the door in the morning and making sure that they're alive.
Anything could happen. There's been deaths in prison.
All right, what have we got coming this afternoon then?
Each day, more busloads arrive, making this jail one of the most crowded in the country. Most of the inmates are on remand, so they're waiting for their trial or sentencing. Others are doing time for crimes such as murder, robbery and rape. And anything can happen.
There's an alarm gone off.
Yeah.
And we're going to, it's a code red, so we don't...
A code red alarm involves blood or burns. An inmate has self-harmed. A moment of apprehension as they assess the situation.
Can you talk me through what's happened?
Yeah, so we've got a prisoner who's self-harmed here. He's made superficial cuts to his arm.
Staff say overcrowding is leading to an increase in self-harm and violence because of inmates' frustration with being locked up for longer. Across the wing, Michael's inside for drug offences.
There are some people who simply don't care about prisoners. They're like, they broke the law, they should be locked up, shouldn't be a hotel. But you are supposed to be rehabilitated inside. Do you think prison is providing a rehabilitation?
No. It's a punishment. It's not a rehabilitation. It's hard to rehabilitate yourself in a place where you've got gang violence, postcode wars, drug violence, money wars. If you've got beef there, violence there, drugs there, people collapsing here, the staff, they're outstretched. They're trying to do this, this, this and this, but now you want help as well.
Moments later, another alarm, the fifth of the day. Yesterday, there were more than 30.
So they've just jumped on the netting. Prison officers are running up the stairs to try and get them down.
What the staff are saying is that it can turn really quickly. A quiet moment can become chaotic within a matter of seconds. As one prison officer said, it's like the flick of a switch.
Gang violence is an ongoing threat at Pentonville and has had some serious consequences for staff. This prison officer broke both her wrists while separating two gang members during a fight.
It just gets really messy sometimes and they're quite small space. Stressful? Stressful. Yeah, stressful.
Seema Katecha, BBC News, HMP Pentonville.
Still to come on today's programme, we'll hear from the polar explorer who's taking over as the UK's new Chief Scout. First though, it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are.
The explorer Dwayne Fields, who was the first black Briton to walk to the North Pole, has been named as the UK's new Chief Scout. He'll replace Bear Grylls, who's standing down after 15 years, and says scouting changed his life as a boy. Our correspondent Sophie Long has been to meet him.
Thank you, Dwayne. You are now officially our 11th Chief Scout.
Welcoming the new leader of their pack. He's already a well-known face to some who follow the explorer and television presenter on social media. Dwayne Fields swapped a life in rural Jamaica for an estate in East London at the tender age of 6. When he became a scout, it restored his hope for the future and put him on a path that led all the way to the North Pole. Now he says it's his chance to give back.
When I was a kid, becoming a scout made the world of difference to me. I remember being a 7-year-old kid approaching that scout hut not far from here, just up the road in North London, and being scared, anxious, so shy I couldn't speak to anyone. And I remember walking out of that scout hut feeling like I was 10 feet tall because I was believed in, and I had been given the ability to believe in myself as well. My confidence grew.
He's stepping into some pretty big shoes. Bear Grylls is the outgoing Chief Scout. At 34, he was the youngest man to take on the role, having already climbed Everest. Announcing he was stepping down after 15 years, he said being Chief Scout had been the greatest honour of his life. Scouting has a long history in Britain and around the world. It was in London more than 100 years ago Lord Baden-Powell was unanimously acclaimed Chief Scout of the World, a title no other Chief Scout has held since. The movement has come a long way since, with generations learning life skills with volunteer scout leaders. In 1976, the Venture Scouts, now known as Explorers, opened their doors to young women. But it wasn't until 2007 that it became mandatory for all sections to let girls in. Now it is fully inclusive, and young people of all backgrounds are actively encouraged to get involved.
It's not just camping and canoeing anymore. There are 7,000 scout groups across the country offering activities from coding to community projects to around 500,000 young people. So what do they think of their new leader?
He seems like such a genuine person, and he's really, really passionate for scouting, which is really nice to see, and I think he's going to do a great job.
As he was a scout as a child, so he knows the experiences that people like to go through.
I love him. I got to meet him in the World Scout Jamboree last year, and he was amazing. He really connected with us and was really inspirational, so I think he's going to be great for the movement.
The Scouts' motto is, of course, be prepared. But nowadays, that's as much about being prepared to ask big questions and listen with open minds as it is about bringing a penknife. Sophie Long, BBC News, Scout Park, North London.
The UK's National Bee Unit says it's in a race against time to try to destroy invasive Asian hornet nests in Kent and Sussex before the new queens hatch by late September. So far this year, 10 Asian hornet nests have been found in the southeast of England, and there's a fear they could spread further across the UK. Fiona Irving reports.
Up there, it's up there. If you stand here where I am here.
In the small Kent village of Alcombe, an Asian hornet's nest has been discovered.
Yeah, it's a decent size, that.
Around 30 metres up, hundreds of these invasive insects are busy growing their colony. This nest will soon be destroyed, and for the government team in charge of doing that, there's an urgency to their work.
At this point in the year, the queen is almost certainly one queen in that nest, but as we move into the autumn, more queens will be laid, with the intention that those ones would then disperse once they become mature.
So is it a bit of a race against time to try and spot these nests and get rid of them before those queens disperse?
Yes, it is.
Hundreds of miles from Kent, on the Channel Island of Jersey, a war is being waged against the Asian hornet. It was first spotted here in 2016. Last year, more than 200 nests were found and lanced with pesticides. On this small island, they've become experts on this apex predator.
The more you understand about them, the more chance we've got of managing them and controlling them. We can't eradicate them now they're here.
And they need to be controlled. One nest of Asian hornets can kill 11 kilograms of insects in a season. They pose a significant threat to honeybees and other pollinators. Just take a look at the size of this nest. This would have been home to a colony of around 3,000 Asian hornets. And beekeepers from Kent and Sussex are coming to Jersey to learn what they do here to help them in the southeast fight against this invasive species.
A tiny blob of glue on the thorax of the hornet.
A live hornet will always betray where its nest is. This is tinsel tagging, or streamering, a technique pioneered on the island to help track the Asian hornet as it flies home.
With the naked eyes, you can probably see that hornet for 200 or 300 metres flying, and with binoculars even further. Whereas before, normally, without a streamer attached like that, you'd be lucky to see them go more than 30, 40 metres before you lose sight of them.
We've got the one up the road there.
Nikki is one of an army of hornet hunter volunteers in Jersey. She's timing how long streamered hornets take to return to her bait station.
Streamer was 3 minutes, which implies 300 metres away.
It sounds like it's quite addictive doing this.
Oh, it is addictive, and it's a challenge. And some of the territory is a challenge as well. But yes, you do it. It's like being a detective, a hornet detective.
Can't you see it? I can now.
Across the island, they've destroyed 123 nests so far this year.
Put her in there, that's it.
Back in the UK, 10 nests have been found since May. Bee inspectors mark the hornets with different colours to help identify them when they return to the bait station. All the nests have been found in the southeast.
Here she goes.
The numbers are down on last year, and the bee unit believes it can eradicate the hornet entirely. Some beekeepers think it's already too late.
Once it's there, it will probably lay in areas that we don't know about. If they're in the local woods, we don't know they're there. But then suddenly you'll get a boom year, you get all the right conditions, and they're off again.
So the horse is bolted as well?
The horse is bolted, yeah. The horse is bolted and it's out of the field, it's past the next field, and it's in the next village.
The southeast is seen as the home guard, protecting the rest of the country from an Asian hornet invasion. And those on the front line say they need more foot soldiers, more members of the public to help in that fight. Fiona Irving, BBC News.
And you can find out more about Asian hornets in a new BBC documentary. The Killer Hornets is available to stream now on BBC iPlayer. The actor and Monty Python star Terry Jones was described by his co-star Sir Michael Palin as one of the funniest writer-performers of his generation after he died in January 2020. Now the comic's fellow Monty Pythons are determined to raise funds to get a statue of Terry erected on the prom in Colwyn Bay, where he was born. The Python on the Prom campaign, which was started by the actor's children, aims to raise £120,000, as Matthew Richards reports.
Now you listen here. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Even without a statue, Terry Jones has left an indelible image in the minds of Monty Python fans. Brian's mother in The Life of Brian, which he also directed, was just one of the unforgettable characters he created. But his comedy colleagues Sir Michael Palin and Terry Gilliam think that a permanent memorial on the prom in Colwyn Bay would remind everyone of where he came from.
His Welshness was there to sort of question things, really. I don't think he liked just accepting what the perfidious English came up with. He said, come on, there's got to be something else. And I realised that was because he was Welsh. Yeah. And because he sort of felt he had something to prove. And he was brilliant, really. A real credit to Colwyn Bay and this whole surrounding area.
Terry Jones returned to Colwyn Bay several times to support the local theatre in a town where his family had their own theatrical links.
My grandfather used to run the Colwyn Bay Operatic Society, and they used to put on showings of Gilbert and Sullivan and performances of Gilbert and Sullivan on the pier, in the theatre on the pier.
Alongside the surviving members of the comedy troupe, stars such as Emma Thompson are supporting the Python on the Prom campaign. Steve Coogan has also pledged cash towards the £120,000 target, especially if the sculpture represents one very particular side of Terry Jones.
So if you can raise any money, I'll throw in a few shekels to help get this thing built. I think it's a wonderful thing. I do hope they choose Terry on the naked on the playing the organ.
The Nude Organist, which was such a classic piece of Terry Jones, in the way he sat, and it would be wonderful by the sea here, because it's sort of it's
it will crave. People will come here just to rub the bare bottom.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Good luck.
For Terry Jones's son and daughter, whatever the final design, it'll be a special way to honour their late father.
It's the kind of silly thing that he would have really enjoyed, and the idea of him being in character on the prom here just absolutely would have tickled him. So we're really kind of excited to try and finally get the fundraising message out there to everybody.
Spam, 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 baked beans, spam, 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 and spam. Oh, lobster thermidor, crevettes with a Mornay sauce, garnished with truffle pate brandy and a fried egg on top, and spam.
Now it's the weather with Chris Fawkes.
Hello, it's another afternoon of huge weather contrasts. Now there will be quite large parts of the UK that have lots of sunshine to look forward to, and it will feel warm, particularly across northern and western areas of the UK, with temperatures running well above average. 25 in Manchester and 26 in Liverpool. Parts of East Anglia could get up to a humid 27 degrees Celsius. However, if you're stuck in the south of England, it's a different story. A lot of cloud, and we have had some heavy downpours here through the day today. Still 1 or 2 left over into the afternoon, but I think more generally the rain will turn at least a little bit lighter for a time as you go through the afternoon. But the temperatures here, nothing really to write home about. Away from that band of rain, yes, we've got that warm sunshine to look forward to, although there will be some areas of low cloud and mist that continue to linger and loiter across parts of eastern Scotland and eastern England, just keeping the temperatures pegged back here. Otherwise, Warm in the sunshine, 26 degrees there in Liverpool. Now, overnight tonight, our weather fronts will finally give up the ghost across southern counties of England, so it will become drier for a time. We'll see a return of low clouds and mist and fog patches, particularly across eastern Scotland, eastern England, and with that comes the threat of occasional spots of drizzle as well. It'll be quite a humid night. The weekend, still dominated by this area of low pressure. The low, if anything, will bring the threat of some heavy showers further northwards with time. Now for England and Wales, it's here where we'll see the lion's share of the showers on Saturday. Quite a clump of showers look set to come in through the morning, I think, across parts of Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, maybe into northeast England too, so watch out for those. Further southwards, yes, you could see some thunderstorms break out, but I think it's across Scotland and Northern Ireland that the weather should stay dry with the best of the sunshine and some of the higher temperatures as well. For Sunday, showers, perhaps some longer spells of rain, still with the same area of low pressure. Again, the majority of the downpours will be focused across England and Wales, leaving Scotland and Northern Ireland drier, but potentially turning a little bit cloudier. Temperatures here, high teens to low 20s. Then into next week, a change in the jet stream pattern will bring us some colder air moving down from the north, and with that an area of low pressure that could bring some quite persistent rain for a time across northern areas, otherwise showers, with the weather turning a lot cooler and fresher for all of us.
You are watching BBC News with me, Sarah Campbell. Now, the Green Party conference begins in Manchester today. It comes after the party had its most successful general election ever this year, winning 4 seats. Now, in the next few minutes, there will be a welcome speech for the Green Party conference. So as we wait for that to happen, let's speak to Harry Farley, who's in Manchester. Harry, hello to you. As we were saying there, very successful post-election and 4 seats. So what difference will that make? And what's the general atmosphere at the party conference this year?
Well, the atmosphere here, Sarah, is one of celebration, a jubilant one, as I suppose you'd expect. I can just hear the introductions of that celebration getting underway behind me. You might be able to see a few stragglers coming in and out of the conference hall. And we're expecting to hear, as you say, Adrian Ramsey, one of the co-leaders of the Green Party, to speak, to open the conference in the next few minutes. It was due to be a joint speech with Carla Denyer, his other co-leader, but we're told that she has COVID-like symptoms, so he will be delivering the speech on his own, and one that we're expecting to focus largely on the economy rather than directly on climate issues. The Green Party looking to position themselves, I suppose, as that challenge to the Labour government from the left. So I think we can expect them to say that Labour should be bolder and braver, in their words, more ambitious, and to criticise what they say is Labour's doom and gloom. And we heard from Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, a few weeks ago saying that things will get worse before they get better. And the argument here in Manchester from the Green Party is that that is not necessarily the case, and they're calling for example, a wealth tax on the very wealthiest, for increased taxes on those who earn more than £50,000 a year. And they are saying that by those measures that more investment could be made immediately in public services. So that's the argument. I think we can also expect criticism, for example, of the winter fuel allowance cut to most pensioners that Labour have announced, and also to the 2-child benefit cap as well. So those are the kind of arguments that we're expecting to hear in the next few minutes here in Manchester as the conference for the Green Party gets underway.
Harry, you'll have been following Green Party politics for a few years now. I just wonder what difference it makes having, it's still only 4 MPs. Of course, Caroline Lucas held the torch for so many years on her own. What difference is the Green Party thinking that having 4 MPs in Westminster will give them in terms of, I guess, sort of influence?
I think that's a really good question, and it's not just in terms of they've gone from 1 MP to 4, and so I think there's a question about how they use those 4 MPs, what kind of things they focus on. We've already seen, for example, criticism of Adrian Ramsey, who we're expected to hear from in the next few minutes, over opposing electricity pylons in his constituency. Labour argue that's hypocrisy because you need that kind of infrastructure to get to clean energy, and Adrian Ramsey, for his part, argues, well, there are alternatives like putting the pylons underground or under the sea. So there are questions questions about how they use those 4 MPs, what they spend their time on. But from senior figures that I've been speaking to in the party over the last 24 hours or so, they also acknowledge that those 4 MPs in themselves pose a bit of a challenge, because they won in seats both in places like Brighton and Bristol, those student hubs, as it were, where the Green Party has traditionally been quite strong, but also in places like East Anglia and North Herefordshire, former Tory strongholds, attracting people who had voted Conservative in the past but who were concerned about the climate. And so what the Green Party has got now is a coalition of voters. You've got people primarily concerned about the climate. You've got people who have joined perhaps from the left, who are maybe disaffected by Keir Starmer's caution, I suppose, with fiscal rules in particular, wanting to see more radical left-wing economics. And you've also got people who have joined the Green Party because of their stance on Gaza. They were one of the first to call for a ceasefire and have been very strong in their pro-Palestinian stance on that. So you've got this enormous range of voters, and there is a challenge for the party in how they keep that coalition together and how they even build on it. And one senior party figure said that they need to acknowledge that and I suppose have a reset for what the Green Party stands for, what the Green Party advocates, with that new, maybe very different base of support.
Yeah, just to remind viewers, we are awaiting the Adrian Ramsey, who's one of the co-leaders of the Green Party, to take to the podium there at the Green Party conference. Gosh, we're already into party conference season. The summer is definitely over. Adrian Ramsey, I was just looking at the write-up on the BBC News website, talking about the fact that he's only just managed to move into his Westminster office. It's empty, it says, apart from 2 desks, a sofa and a fridge, and he hasn't yet had time to unpack. It's just a reminder that he really is, along with his colleagues, newbies into Westminster, and here he is going to be making his first party conference speech.
That's exactly right, and there is an element of that sort of wide-eyed excitement here at the conference. First time they've had 4 MPs, nearly 7% of the vote as well, which was a record high for the Green Party. So there is an element of that, I suppose, fresh-faced excitement about what they could do. I think there are also underlying that sort of initial excitement. There is also elements of tension that we've already picked up here at the Green Party conference. As we came in earlier this morning, there was a protest outside from a group calling themselves Greens in Exile, people who say that they have been expelled from the Green Party for their gender-critical views. Adrian Ramsey, for his part, says that he thinks people should be allowed to express gender-critical views as long as it's done respectfully. But I suppose it's an indication of some of the tensions that are under the surface here, under the surface level excitement, that perhaps will be discussed, will be thrashed out, will be debated, largely behind closed doors over the next few days in Manchester. But as you say, the Green Party, excited about the new opportunities it has, the new 4 MPs that it has in Westminster, but also facing some issues and challenges with how the policies that it takes, the stances it takes, and those internal debates that I think we can expect to hear and to see over the next few days.
Yeah, and Harry, although we've been talking about the fact that they are a small presence in Westminster, of course, they are a powerful presence in local government. And again, they had another record set of local election results, more than 800 councillors across the country, including 141 in the east of England, which, as you said, Adrian Ramsey's part of the world now, and somewhere where the Greens are doing increasingly well.
That's exactly right. And as well as those councillors, they also tell me that they've had an increase in membership, for example, in the last few months, 2,000 more since the election itself. So the Green Party, there is a sense here of a party on the up, on the rise, but there is that challenge as well of the new coalition of voters that it has. And I was speaking to one senior party figure who says the reason that the party is so much focusing on Labour, their criticism is very much directed at the Labour government, is because they know that in around 40 or so seats they came second to Labour. So if this is a party that wants to grow from that base, to build from that base of 4 MPs that they have now, it's Labour MPs that they are targeting, even though perhaps you might think politically, well, they're more aligned with the Labour Party. That is very much the focus of their critique, the focus of the critique that we can expect from Adrian Ramsey in his speech in the next few moments or so, making that case that they offer bolder, what they call bolder and braver alternative to Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party.
Harry, we are awaiting Adrian Ramsey taking to the podium. If you wouldn't mind waiting there for us, we're just going to move away to another story, but we will come back as soon as Mr. Ramsey does take to the stage. So for the moment, Harry Farley at the Green Party conference, thank you.